Kevin McCarthy has been ousted as House Speaker after a vote in the chamber. 8 Republicans voted to remove him from the position. Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz filed a resolution yesterday which set up the vote. He has criticized how the Speaker has handled spending since Republicans retook the chamber. CBS News politics reporter Zach Hudak joins us now. And Zach, obviously, we both have worked on the Hill. And just from your experience covering Capitol Hill, I just want you to break down for our viewers how we got here to this historic moment.
Nicole, this is an event that, as you know, has been we've been waiting for it to happen since McCarthy was elected as Speaker of the House. It took 12.5 votes just to get him through that vote, and he had to make a number of deals with the far-right wing of his party just to get accepted as Speaker, just to get sworn in. And among those deals was the ability to bring a motion to vacate the chair with a single person bringing it to the floor. So this is something that we have been anticipating for about a year and a half here, and we have known that he would, eventually face this. I was a bit surprised because Kevin McCarthy, throughout his time in the House, has been sort of a survivor. He is very good at making relationships with members and having members feel strong loyalty toward him. So as the Congress went on and as he made deals here and there with Democrats to keep the government funded, just this past week, for instance, he continued to anger that far-right wing of the party to the point that it boiled over, where he did not have enough support in the Republican caucus to keep him in the Speaker's chair.
I also want to bring in my other colleague, congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, I know the Speaker the former Speaker just walked by you a short time ago. What did he have to say?
I asked him point blank if he's going to run again for Speaker. He told me he's going to make a statement shortly. He's now back in his office, potentially having calls with some of the people who defected or with Democrats to see if he can secure what he needs to secure to run again. But in the meantime, there's some things to note logistically and administratively. The Speaker pro tem, acting Speaker, is Patrick McHenry, a McCarthy loyalist from North Carolina, and they have recessed the House to the subject to the call of the chair, which means indefinitely they're going to be in recess. So there's no imminent new vote for Speaker. I talked to 2 of the defectors, Bob Good of Virginia and Tim Burchett of Tennessee, and asked each if they had a name, somebody they're going to put out there as their nominee to be Speaker. Neither said they did. So at this point, we kind of are where we were in January, aren't we, Nicole? We're on the cusp of a potential marathon drawn-out vote for Speaker. Only at this point, we're 9 months into the Congress, and we are right in the middle of a tenuous time where the government funding is being measured by weeks and days, and a government shutdown is looming in November.
Zach, I want to turn back to you because we just heard from Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who forced this motion to vacate. He spoke to reporters a short time ago. Let's take a listen.
I think there was a stage of denial, and I've certainly experienced a good amount of their anger, and now we appear to be headed toward bargaining. I think the world of Steve Scalise. I think he'd make a phenomenal speaker.
Is this a victory for Matt Gaetz?
Matt Gaetz is one of the few people who seem to have come out on top here, if you look to it the way that Matt Gaetz looks to it. Matt Gaetz and the far-right flank of the Republican caucus in the House views the current situation in the country as we would rather shut down the government. We would rather deal with the implications of that than continue to fund things like the war in Ukraine. So is it a victory overall? No. Is it a victory for the American people? No. But this is a victory for folks in the Republican Party who feel like Kevin McCarthy and mainstream Republicans are out of step with what needs to be done to get this country back on track, what needs to be done to get this country back into a good financial position. So for Matt Gaetz, he and a handful of other Republicans are the few winners in this.
All right, Zach Hudak, Scott MacFarlane, thank you so much for joining us. I want to turn now to our political panel. We are joined now by Maura Gillespie. She is a former congressional aide, as well as Jonathan Kott, who is a partner at Capitol Counsel and previously served as a senior advisor to both Senators Chris Coons and Joe Manchin. Again, want to thank both of you guys for joining us, and Maura, because you did work on the Hill for such a long time. I really just want to start by getting your reaction to all of this.
It's a sad day. I mean, this is not something that we should be celebrating. I don't think anyone who cares about the institution is celebrating, except for Matt Gaetz, obviously, but he also doesn't care about the institution that he serves in. It's shocking to me, not so shocking, but it's sad to me that somebody who is in Congress doesn't actually understand how Congress works or want it to work. This is just, because again, Matt Gaetz doesn't have a plan. There is no plan. He says that Scalise would make a great
But then why
speaker.
do you think he was successful today?
Because Democrats aren't going to back Kevin McCarthy, right? They don't have any reason to. He hasn't done anything to earn their trust or their respect, quite frankly. And so it's not surprising to me that they weren't willing to step up and help him out. It's not their job to do so. But it's just a sad situation that we're witnessing. And again, it's going to hurt Republicans because this just shows an inability to govern, as sad as that is.
And Jonathan, I want to get your reaction as well. I mean, you've worked with a number of Democrats. Why don't you think they back the speaker in the end?
Because there's absolutely no reason that Democrats who disagree with Kevin McCarthy on every single thing he stands for would ever back him. They're unified behind their leader, Hakeem Jeffries. Nancy Pelosi never had this problem, and she had very slim majorities. The idea that Democrats would ever do this was born out of some fantasy West Wing episode.
But they could have voted present. I mean, there were other tactics.
Right, but there's no reason for them to not vote the way they feel. They didn't have to do tactics or anything. That would have been great political theater, but Democrats voted the way they believed, that Hakeem Jeffries should be the leader of the House. And the Republicans are doing a very good job of making the case that Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries should be in control of the House, since they can't even govern it for a year without having
do you think there's any scenario where that happens?
That would require Republican switching, which I don't think Matt Gaetz stands for a lot. He stands for getting on Fox News, which doesn't seem to be taking him that often. Now he has to go on Newsmax and OAN, but I don't think they stand for helping Democrats get the speakership.
Maura, what do you think are the next steps here? Do you think the speaker will run again, or the former speaker?
He has said that he will. So I think he's probably back in his office, huddled with his team, figuring out what's the next steps.
But is there anything he can do to change the calculus?
Aside from what he did back in January, continue to give them whatever they want. But again, Bob Good and Matt Gaetz have made it pretty clear that there's nothing that Kevin McCarthy could do to sway them. So I really don't see where we go from here. And again, it's so short-sighted. It's so self-serving what Matt Gaetz is doing, because his complaint is that they're not doing enough on the economy. If you want to make an impact on the economy, you should want to win elections. You're not going to win an election by, one, shutting down the government, and two, holding Congress hostage and not letting the House do its work. I mean, this is just, again, we're talking about political theater, but it doesn't have an end sight. There's no goal here, and he doesn't have a plan. And that's the really frustrating part here. Matt Gaetz, his only plan thus far was to get on all the Sunday shows. Check, he did that. To oust Kevin McCarthy, which he just did just now, and get the attention for it, so that he's not put attention on his, ethics investigations and other issues that he has back in Florida.
Yeah, and Jonathan, I guess just to go back to you, and again, trying to read between the lines here in terms of why Democrats voted the way that they did. I mean, if you look at the big picture, I mean, this slows everything. This gums up the work. We know Congress has to approve more government funding in the next 45 days. This now kind of throws everything into limbo. That's not necessarily in the interest of Democrats. So just for the sake of continuing government, again, why don't you think they would back the speaker on this?
I think it's there is no scenario ever that Democrats are going to back Kevin McCarthy to be speaker. I don't know where that's come from. Democrats
who do you think they'd be willing to work with then?
Hakeem Jeffries is the leader of the Democratic Party. He is the person they want to be speaker. They will work to make him speaker. That's the only person Democrats will work to make speaker. Democrats are ready to work to keep the government running and functioning. Keep in mind, the only people that shut down the government are Republicans because they don't actually believe government helps and works for their constituents. I find it very odd that a lot of Republicans do everything they can to get to Washington to then say Washington shouldn't work or doesn't work. But Democrats will work with whoever is the speaker to get bipartisan bills done, which they did under Nancy Pelosi and they've done under Kevin McCarthy. But they're not going to help save Kevin McCarthy. James Carville told Democrats, and we all believe this, when your enemy is drowning, throw him a freaking anvil.
Morris, I mean, is there anyone you see that can rise to the occasion if the speaker or former speaker does not run again?
So I do think so, because we've had that happen in the past, right? We had plenty of Democrats who came out and said that they would have, helped John Boehner during this time, and he had countless Democrats who were willing to, either not show up for the vote or back him because they saw the greater good. But that's also because he had their trust, and he did. Maybe they didn't always agree on policy, but they knew that he was going to serve the whole House. And in moments when push came to shove, that he was going to look out for the interests of the whole House and not just his party and not just his flank. They could trust that he would do that. And they also respected him. So I think that that's obviously a huge difference here, obviously what we're seeing, and to your point about them not wanting to step up and help Kevin McCarthy. But the list of members who they would be willing to help, I do believe is very, very small. Just given how fractured things have been ever since, honestly, January 6th and after so many Republicans voted not to certify the elections, Democrats in Congress don't want to be associated with those members. So it's going to be really hard to, one, find someone that could get the votes that is needed by the vast majority of the Republican conference, and then could also acquire a couple votes or non-votes from Democrats. So and whoever's being mentioned right now is probably slim to be on that list, maybe Patrick McHenry, but the right flank won't go for that.
I think we have bipartisan support for John Boehner coming back as Speaker. That's what we heard.
But does he want to do it?
No, he does not.
It's a no. Well, thank you so much, Maura. Jonathan, appreciate you for being on.